Okay, guys, so welcome to another edition of COVID-19 Small Business Support Centre webinar. It's our double whammy on a Wednesday, basically. So we started off this morning with a great conversation with Piers around business leadership and management and the crisis. And this afternoon, I've been looking forward to this, but this afternoon I've got the amazing Allan Kleynhans that's joining us, basically talk around inner and self-leadership, and more importantly, the clarity conversation that we've got to have with ourselves. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guests the resident expert that is Piers Mummery. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you, Ketan. Very well, thank you.
Excellent. And then Allan, really good to have you on, bro.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that, my friend. Still chuckling to myself about the fact you're still struggling to say my surname.
I'm always going to struggle with that. It's one of those things that people struggle with my name, as in it's Ketan Makwana, but the amount of times that I've had variations of that. So let's get this on the record. How do you pronounce your surname?
I always say to people that if you can say Calvin Klein, then you can say Kleynhans, right? Calvin Kleynhans.
Kleynhans. There we go. So it's Allan Kleynhans. How's that?
Perfect.
Actually, for our visitors, people that are watching this on record or on the live itself, who may not know who you are, and if they don't, it's pretty much crazy. It would be really good if you gave a little bit of a background on you.
Myself, yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I spend my full-time, most of my time speaking on a stage in some parts of the world, but we can't do that now. So we're doing that from home in the comfort of our laptop or our phone.
Yeah.
And I'm also a coach, and I've been working for 20 years now, just about 20 years working with companies and individuals and teams and groups of people, and helping them to really uncover their own potential and helping them to perform at a much better level in their own lives and in their business, and really helping them. And really what it comes down to is helping them to actually heal the relationship with themselves so they can show up in a much more authentic and a more powerful way.
I love that. I mean, I know you've been doing quite a lot of meditations and stuff like that on Facebook during this period, right?
Yeah, I've been doing one every day at 11 a.m. live every day with a group of people, which has been amazing. We've had lots of people coming to that live meditation every morning, 11 a.m. London time. It's been amazing.
That's super, super, super. And I think... if you don't mind, with today's session, I really want to kind of deep dive a little bit into your background. I know I've had you on previous podcasts like Legal Disruptors and stuff, but I think there is this whole thing that you bring to the sort of the mindset and the well-being or personal well-being, which I think is going to be really important for today's call. And actually, having Piers on hand to bring in some sort of value into that context and conversation will be amazing. So I think it would be really, really good to sort of kick off. This focus that we have this week is primarily on mindset, leadership, and peak performance. Yes. And on Tuesday or yesterday we had Raghav on, and we were talking very much around slowing things down, working from moment to moment and getting into that zone where you don't have to be perfect at everything in that respect. This morning, we've been also talking really around what it takes to be that leader within your organization, in your business. The fact that, in a matter of crisis, most people kind of look up to leadership. But I want you to really go down the line right now as if you are the leader, and, what are the kind of clarity conversations that you've got to start having with yourself. But before we go into that, it would be really good to get a little bit of background context on you. I mean, you've been in the army and you've had all sorts of different things going on. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your story with us first?
Yeah, sure. I can do that briefly. Thank you. I grew up in South Africa. I grew up in Durban on the east coast of South Africa. I grew up in the late 60s. I was born in 66. And so I grew up the first 6 years of my life. Always whenever I get the chance, and I give a little bit of context, I'd say to people I grew up right next door to Point Road Police Station, which was Point Road was a pretty rough area, one of the toughest neighborhoods in the country at that time. Definitely probably the toughest neighborhood in Durban. And I grew up next to that police station for the first 6 years of my life. It was as a kid, I always say that as a young boy, when you look at men in uniform, you either want to be a soldier, a policeman, a fireman, an astronaut, or someone in uniform, and you look at men in uniform as somebody who represent, strength, safety, certainty, that kind of thing. But however, growing up next to that police station really left me with a severe feeling of uncertainty, because what I saw in the yard next door was brutal, to say the least. And so having those experiences further into my teenage years, I went to 2 private schools, wasn't academic, was bullied severely, had low self-esteem. And then I went to the military, and compounding on top of what I already had in terms of limiting beliefs about myself and a very debilitating self-concept, was furthermore, strengthened those limiting beliefs about the fact, after I came out of the military, I had to then try and process what I'd been through, especially the last 7 months of 1987, which I was on an operation in Angola. And I was a patrol motorist and an RPG-7 rocket launcher. That was my role. And so we went into Angola, and it was illegal at the time. We were not supposed to be there. It was South Africa was there covertly, and it exploded onto the international press about 3 years later. But most people didn't realize that we'd been there for some time. But coming back from that, having seen what I'd seen and done what I'd done there, and it was a full-on combat, just about every other day. And losing friends, and then having to drop mortars on the enemy at very close combat and very, very close environments. And then that left me with post-traumatic stress. I was severe mood swings, very unhappy, and just trying to process that. But luckily, that's when I was introduced to the subject of psychology and personal development, and that's when I became a student for the first time at 21. And then I just became a voracious reader. And I read book after book after book, and I was trying to understand what was happening inside my own mind, and really trying to find myself. And I studied religion and started studying everything to do with human behavior. And then one thing led to the next. I went to lots of workshops, and and then eventually arrived at the realization that everybody's challenged with the same things, right? It doesn't matter how it shows up or what kind of experiences you've had, right? Everyone's fighting their own battle in their own head. It doesn't mean just because I actually went to war, it doesn't mean that somebody else who didn't go to war isn't as, severely traumatized by their own experience as a youngster. And we've, studying trauma, I discovered that everybody's experienced trauma, no matter how subtle that trauma may be or how severe, it affects us all at some level. And then what we do is then we are introduced at a young age to this whole idea about right and wrong, good and bad, on the seesaw of life, this duality that we live in. Of trying to be good and trying to be accepted and looking for validation. But really what we're looking for love and acceptance. And that causes us to behave in all kinds of ways. And so then once I began to apply what I learned in my own life, and I began to heal my own traumas and heal my own demons and really embrace them, actually, is a better way of saying it. I began to share that, and so then, I began to share that in different environments. And then one thing led to the next. I started, I worked with the Natal Sharks rugby team for a season, worked with some of the Springbok rugby players, worked with the South African netball team, worked with the South African pole jumper at that time, pole vaulter. And so, that then led to, all kinds of work with corporate environments. And it's been a fascinating ride. And that's, 32 years as a student, now still learning, and 20 years as a teacher and a facilitator. And, I've taught in Russia and, all across Eastern Europe and most of Europe, and up and down the UK, in America, and in South Africa too, obviously. And it's all of that just leads me to believe that everyone, we all trying to do the best we can, but it's based on the level of consciousness we have, and most of us are unconscious, and that's the challenge. So it's about becoming conscious and really understanding what's driving me unconsciously, and really bringing that to the surface so you can heal that. Otherwise, what happens is, we talk about success in business, or you talk about leadership, if you think about, if you look around the world, everyone who's ever lived and died, and, if you look at some of the great leaders that we aspire to and we look up to, the list, in my own opinion, is quite short, really. It's quite small because, when you consider that most people are driven by their unconscious and really looking for something instead of just showing up in a powerful way because that's who they naturally are, it changes the whole game when you can understand that,
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, I think, it's amazing, how much of your past kind of is still with you in your presence in this moment. You said the words unconscious and compound. These are things that are, I guess, very much kind of live with us as we go along. Now, current climates or environments we are in, almost confine us. So when, you know, those compounds and unconsciousness starts to kind of move itself or head itself forward.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into kind of areas of things that people should be thinking about doing or how to do practical side of things around having these clarity conversations, you have pretty much facilitated keynotes and workshops around the world, everywhere. You know, you've worked, you know, alongside the greats like the Tony Robbins of the world and stuff like this. And, you know, what's the one same thing that you see or consistent thing that you see when you work with groups of people? I think, you know, is there this underlining thing of people are unexpecting or they anticipate particular things, or, you know, and is there a consistent pivot moment that you see when you're working with people? Can you kind of describe what it's like to be in a room as a facilitator watching how things are changing?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Ketan. And you know, and I've said this, you know, I say this to every audience, no matter where you go, and I've been to, you know, many countries, and there's a lot of countries I haven't been to yet, which I'm keen to go to. But having been to the countries I've been to, it leads me to believe that, you know, human beings are human beings. Wherever we go, we're the same, right? We've got the same fears, we've got the same desires.
Yeah.
And I think the most common, to answer that question, that question that you asked specifically, the most common thing I see showing up for people is a fear to really be self-expressed, and very easy to jump to conclusions. We make conclusions super fast, and we make assumptions very, very quickly about what something means, about what someone says. And generally, the majority of people, what they'll do is they'll always opt for a conclusion which leaves them feeling disempowered. Like, what have I done wrong? Or I'm feeling less than. There's that feeling of I'm feeling less than because of you've done something or you've said something. And as a result, many people are apologetic for no reason. I always hear people saying sorry. And whenever I hear people say sorry to me, I say, well, don't ever apologize to me unless you've hurt me, right? and so it's because of this thing, and it goes all the way back, you know. And I've worked with some very, very successful people in terms of coaching individuals, business owners, you know, of large teams and large organizations. And we all the same, really, where we've had experiences as a kid, and that's driving us still. Like you said, you know, we think that the past is in the past, but actually it's always with us, because I say to people, often most people are driving through life looking in the rearview mirror all the time. And it's not the past that's defining us. It's actually the future that we are constantly bringing forward with us, that we keep recreating. So it's understanding that, you know, when you can really go back and look at, okay, what's driving me, and what was I always craving as a kid, and what am I still trying to crave, or what I'm craving still, what am I looking for really in terms of from other people, connection, the validation, or etc. And then, you know, how can I really understand how that's causing me to show up in an unconscious fashion? And I can stop looking for that validation. I can just really recognize who I am, and that's naturally allow myself to, you know, to express myself in a powerful, free way. The freedom to just be yourself without the fear of the opinion of other people. That's the most common fear, is this, and it's linked to humiliation. You know, this thing about humiliation. That's why that's also one of the biggest challenges in a group environment, in an organization. If you think about an organization has a group environment where they have a meeting, and most people do not offer their opinion. I've mediated in those kinds of environments, and when you encourage people to offer their opinion, they're reluctant, because really unconsciously they're worried about, if I say something, it's not the right thing, I might be humiliated. And that's a real fear for a lot of people, unconscious or conscious.
I mean, look, and yeah, I don't want to make it too business orientated, because I think this is very much about, it doesn't matter whether it's in business or in life in general. This is a 360 conversation. But I think obviously the pressures of business failure amounts to a lot of the tension that business owners will hold. This morning alone, Piers and I were talking about some of the more visual business owners out there, your Grant Cardones, your Sir Richard Bransons, who are also under immense pressure themselves. And one of the things we kind of extracted from this is they surround themselves with other people, advisors and people that will not just guide them down a particular path, but they allows them to have that kind of free conversation with themselves to a certain extent. You know, I mean, the fear of failing, the fear of publicly being seen to have failed has this whole thing of humiliation that attaches to people. You've now got this cross balance here, Allan, now of business owners, like entrepreneurs like us who have children at home as well. And whilst we love our children and we love our wives and our partners and all these kind of things, we have this balancing act now of how much positive and attention in the room type of can you give, and how much can't you give, and when and how and what, and all of these kind of pressures kind of mount up. And I suppose sometimes that can get you to behave in a way that you normally aren't. So can you give me a little bit of an insight into why we are seeing perhaps slightly different behaviors from people now? Not that I want to go into it too much, but our government hasn't really done things properly, fully to the full extent. They've told a few white lies, when they talked about PPE, for example, coming in over the weekend, and actually it was only ordered on Sunday, for example. There's all these kind of small behaviors, which I think are not natural, a not natural thing that the person has, but it's been bestowed on them because of the pressure environment that they're in. Why does that happen? Is there some sort of rescue click button in our mind that goes back to this kind of plan B or something like this? Could you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing we need to remember is that, it's whenever we feel threatened, right? Whenever we perceive any kind of threat,
yes,
whether that's, whatever that is, it creates a response in the body, or a reaction, an immediate reaction in the body. And most people have not, unfortunately, most people have just not done that inner work where they've learned to actually manage their reactions or their responses to anything that seems to be threatening. And first of all, it's also about really understanding what is a threat, right? And is it actually a threat? So really, that comes down to an internal dialogue. It comes down to an internal narrative, or internal communication. And so whether you're leading a team or you're just leading a team of one, it's the same thing, right? Because it's really how you communicate to yourself really determines how you communicate to the world around you. So, when this first all broke, the first thing that I put online is I put one thing online, and I just said, whatever you must remember that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, right? The old phrase from Mark Twain, or whoever said it first. These days it's very difficult to know who said something first, because everybody's saying, ascribing all kinds of names to certain quotes. But I believe it was Mark Twain. He said, we only have fear. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yeah. And so, when we perceive any kind of threat, we react. And what most people do is out of that reaction, they now are looking to act, or there's some kind of, they're either they're going to run, they want to run away, or they want to freeze, or they want to fight. And so that really immediately, that's going to affect how we communicate to ourselves. And what we are focusing on immediately then also determines how we're going to focus on. Are we going to see the glass half full or half empty? And really, now, if you look at what's happened around the world, fear has spread far faster than the COVID-19 itself. It's affected people in crazy ways, right? And, if you go back a few weeks and you see how people were behaving, but now if you see how people are behaving outside, people are really trying to avoid each other at all costs, and I've noticed people getting into arguments with each other because they're too close to each other. And all of that is based on your internal narrative, your internal communication, because of the thing that you make it mean. What are you making something mean? We are meaning-making machines. So whatever happens outside of ourselves, we always give it a meaning inside our head. We say, okay, this is this, and this means this. And we don't even realize we're doing it. It happens so quickly. It happens in nanoseconds. And then we also have these, we add to that, we have the habitual patterns that we built up over 35 years or 45 years, or however old you are. You've got these habitual patterns of reacting and responding to what's happening outside of you. So it really then becomes, it's about being conscious. And what am I going to choose to focus on? What does it actually mean? Let me just pause quickly. Let me think about what's the reaction I'm jumping to right now? What am I telling myself right now? What's the conversation I'm having with myself right now? Is it actually accurate? Can it mean something else? Can I choose a different meaning? What's really going on here? And, when you get triggered by anything, whether it's COVID-19 or somebody saying something to you untoward or whatever it is. I was listening to Sadhguru the other day, right? And he said, it's not what's happening outside of ourselves that's causing us to fear inside. It's the projection that we're creating, or the perception, or the filter that we have. And when we filter it in a certain way, we're gonna react in the way, unless we have trained ourselves to not do that. And really, it's about training yourself to actually talk to yourself in a completely different way, to ask different kinds of questions, to think before you jump to a conclusion. because the mind is so active and it jumps to conclusions so quickly. And because it's well trained, it'll just jump to the usual conclusion. Oh, this is dangerous. This is a threat. This is what I need to do now. I need to do this. And really, most of the threats that we face are not threats, right? They are fabrications of the mind.
It's amazing what you do that. Piers, do you have anything to sort of add here or reflect on what Allan?
Well, you know me, never short of an opinion, so absolutely.
I see you're nodding your head there.
Absolutely. No, it's fascinating. I love this stuff, and there's a few things I wanted to pick up on there. I mean, one is you mentioned about the sort of the public bashing that some people are getting of the government and so on, and I believe this is something linked into human beings are either drawn towards pleasure or away from pain. As creatures, that's what we do, which is part of that fight or flight reaction. Yeah. And whenever you're dealt with a trauma or you're dealt with uncertainty, then your natural reaction, exactly as Allan says, is based on the filters and how you process and think about that. But also, what we look for is something which is drawing us away from that pain and towards something. Mm. So when a prime minister turns around and says something, we want to believe him or her, and we want to latch on to that because we think that's going to take us away from the pain towards safety. Mm. And oftentimes, if that's not true, hence we talk a lot about authenticity in the way we operate, that leadership is about helping people get through these challenges, because not everybody's got the same mental strength, as we well know. Mm. So I think it's really interesting to develop an inner strength in the way you think, and I pick up on that sort of fear of self-expression, because that is something that is prevalent in everybody. Yes. We've all got limiting beliefs, and they're all driven by previous experiences. But I think something that is quite interesting is the this piece about trauma. Because although a lot of this is perceived, there's a very interesting book actually called How the Body Keeps Score, if you know, by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Yes.
And he talks a lot about preconditions for trauma. And when you look at COVID-19 and what's been going on, it's an absolute perfect storm of the conditions that surround trauma, and we're all going through it. And a lot of us don't understand that. Mm. Humans don't like a lack of predictability. That's something we like to know how things are going to pan out. And of course, when that's taken away, we're into that sort of slight chaos mentality. Equally, when we go into a trauma, we feel stuck. You get that sort of hair in the headlights moment. You freeze and you think, what am I going to do? If you then think on top of that, we're laying things like loss of connection. We can't, engage with people like we used to. Yeah. We feel very numb about things. We don't really have a sense of time, the consequences, where we're going, we're losing our safety, you kind of lose that sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. All of those things come together, and it's perfectly understandable as to why, many people across the planet are struggling. Yes. And I think the most important thing is it's okay. It doesn't matter if you struggle, because I've had shit days. We've all had shit days. We all have the same, exactly as you say, Allan. We're all human beings suffering the same things across the planet. Yeah. So this comes back to that connection thing, which is we were talking a lot this morning about using advisors and people like us, who can go out there and we want to help people, and don't be cynical about it. It's important that we get that balance of perspective, no matter how warped your past might be or how, good or bad, get a balanced perspective on things, see your reality for what it is. And then you can take a measured response to that, which hopefully is better and enables you to build on. So I love it. breaking through limited beliefs, fantastic.
Yeah, and Piers makes a very good point there about seeing things as it is, not seeing it worse than it is, which is a human condition. Yes. For the majority of people. Is something happens, the Prime Minister says something, a doctor says something, people jump to the worst conclusion immediately. And they then suddenly now they're into fear. Yep. And then as soon as you get into fear, the energy in your body starts changing, because it starts going to your arms and your legs as you need to run away. And immediately you can't think right,
this morning, I was saying that on the talk this morning with Ket, that, one of the most important things every leader needs to do right now is to acknowledge your reality. Yeah. Look at the reality of your own circumstances. Because that's the perspective, and that's the base you build all your thinking around, is the reality of what's happening right now. Whether that's being mindful about a situation, but just taking reality and seeing it for what it actually is. And it annoys me so much when I, look at, the opinions that are out there. Yes. I mean, I'm as cynical as the next person, but I've made it an absolute cast iron rule to myself that I will only go to a couple of sources for my information, scientific and medical. I don't give a damn what the media say. Because that's all about sensationalism and publicity. Absolutely. I need to get my own reality, and that works for me. I don't listen and watch the trash TV, the trash media, because it doesn't serve any purpose to me.
Yeah.
But, find your own reality, I think, is what
I just want to add a different context in here. Scientifically, if we're going to go down that line, experts suggest that we have about 50,000 thoughts a day, which comes down to roughly around, if my maths is right, roughly about 34 a minute. That's a lot of thoughts. We have a muscle, as Piers calls it, within our head called a brain. We exercise that muscle. It's quite an elastic thing. In terms of the way that we are programmed, it's always to bear negativity or be kind of very restrictive. And, we talk about people being realistic and being open and being this. I think there are people out there that are saying, okay, I hear you, but I still can't do that. What do we tell them? What advice do we give them in terms of, they're not going to be able to go from being totally rigid to totally elastic in one swoop. So what kind of things do one need to start thinking about or acting on or doing?
Okay, I know Alan's going to have a really good answer and lots of ideas around this, but for me, and I pick up on that personally because it comes from a lack of self-esteem, which is an inner confidence that doesn't allow you to project the self, the expression that you really want to. You're frustrated, so you retreat into yourself. So, and that's really, I think, the core is actually getting that self-esteem is one of the most important things to sustain and preserve, because once that's gone, everything else falls off it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, and that comes from a feeling of being safe. If you think, the challenge with most adults is they still are operating out of a paradigm of a 5-year-old where you felt unsafe. And the interesting thing about the human psyche is that it's almost completely formed in terms of the beliefs and the identity by the time you're 7. So anything that happened prior to the age of 7 is really locked solid in the psyche. And then even though you now have got older and more mature as a man or a woman and you're an adult, when you are feeling unsafe, immediately you revert to that little child where you feel, I'm unsafe. What can I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And now suddenly what you have is you have a lack of that self-esteem feels an all-time low then, because now you're not sure what to do. You feel unsafe. The world feels dangerous right now. And then you're just looking for something, as Piers said, you're looking for something that's going to help you to take you out of that immediately, as quickly as possible. So then that's when people start latching onto other people's opinions. And that's the danger of this now, with so many different opinions. And I agree with you, Piers. There's a handful of people that I went to immediately and just were listening to them and listening to what they were saying. And because I've obviously studied so widely myself, I value my own opinion and I feel comfortable in my own opinion, and I've done a lot of internal work. And I think that's the challenge now when you say, Ket. One of the first things I said when this started happening, and I started doing some interviews, and that I said, what the challenge with people who either live alone or maybe they live with a partner or even a family, the biggest challenge they're going to face right now is they actually suddenly now are faced with themselves every day. There's very little distractions. They can work from home, for sure. And some people are still working, and those people are on the front line, and they, that's fine. I'm talking about the average person who now suddenly finds themselves at home with themselves, or with people that they have been with for a long time in a relationship, but they don't really know them properly. And now suddenly, this is where the challenge comes in for a lot of people. They haven't developed a relationship with themselves, or they haven't developed, or now they have the opportunity to really develop a deeper relationship with themselves and the people that they are in lockdown with. And really, investigate that at a deeper level and understand the triggers that are usually going to come up.
Alan, can I add on to that? I mean, we spoke this morning about this, which is about for a leader, right, or in fact anybody in a sort of, I mean, whether you're a parent or whether you're a business owner or whatever that might be, that self-regulation has got to be the first starting point. You can't help somebody else if you can't help yourself.
Absolutely.
How can you love others unless you love yourself? If you're in trouble, you can't help anybody else if you're in trouble. The airlines say, put your own face mask on before you help another person.
Yeah,
and that is absolutely exemplifying this point. Look after yourself to start with. So it's about that sort of having that inner belief, and that sort of developing the self-esteem, feeling safe, talking to yourself. And if that means seeking reassurance from people around you to reconfirm that you are a good person, that you are a strong person, you will get through this, and try and help you look at the more positive aspects of your life. that's a great believer in that. And we talked earlier about, the sort of perpetual optimism. It's a force multiplier. If you keep believing and you keep thinking and you keep telling yourself, you will, it's like every muscle, you'll develop it. If you keep, using dumbbells, you're going to get big biceps. Same with your brain. If you keep telling yourself you're rubbish, you will be rubbish. If you keep telling yourself, I'm good, I'm confident, and everything's okay, you will be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this period of time, it works in two ways. I mean, we talked about not only being confined, as I say, to with specific people, but there's also people in the world that are now separated from their loved ones. I mean, I know a load of clients who are now stuck in Europe, and they come from the ASEANs and they can't go back right now, and vice versa, and things like this. And I think this gives them this whole thing of, I'm on my own, and it's this whole false sense of, no matter how much you have a video call, thank God we have technology today that allows us to have this type of interaction. I think that 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have as much of this going on. But that actually has the trigger as well. So it's not just about who you're with in terms of during these periods, but it's who you're not with as well that can have equally this impact. And what kind of advice would you have for those that are stuck away? I mean, like Piers mentioned quite openly in the past that his kids, your kids are with your partner, your ex-partner in that sense. They're not there with you all the time. If I was traveling around the world and happened to got stuck somewhere in the world because of this pandemic and not being able to get back, I don't know how I would be without.
Yeah. I've got a friend who's in Thailand at the moment, and he's away from his family who live in Reading. And I've got another friend who's moved. He's been here. He's married. His wife's in Vietnam, and she had a daughter in Vietnam, and she and the daughter are stuck there. It is terribly difficult, and I think also, but this, because there's a lot to talk about on this particular subject for me, but developing that appreciation of yourself, and this is where mindfulness can come into it, because the brain kind of, if you focus in three different spheres: the past, the present, and the future. The past is all about regrets and depression, and we could have had, should have had, whatever. The future is all about what ifs, and that's where you can sabotage your own future by getting anxiety and panic and fear. But living in the moment and actually just reassuring yourself that right now, look out the window, the sun is shining, there are birds in the sky, these simple, sort of quite spiritual things. But that reassurance to yourself that wherever your loved ones are in the world, they're okay, they feel the same as you, and you are connected to them spiritually. Because if you sit there, you can convince yourself and get yourself worked into knots about missing people. And we basically push this energy out. We're trying to get it out of ourselves. And it comes back to trying to latch onto something and make sense of it. But the reality is, I can't see, my loved ones. They're just not here. So there's no point in moaning about that. It is what it is. Yeah. I've got to find a different mechanism in order to process that. And so I create these filters in my mind that say, you know what? It's fine. I'm here on my own. Look at the great things I can do. I can sit down, kick down, put my feet up, drink beer, watch TV, do nothing, and not clean the dishes away. Happy days. Silly example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So Allan, just before you go into your point there, I think I guess what we've got to be able to do is find the here and now narrative, and it's not about what we did yesterday and what we could do tomorrow. It's how do you live for today and now, right?
Yeah. Well, Ketan, you mentioned that 50,000 thoughts every 24 hours. Yeah. It's anywhere between 60 and 90,000 depending on what mood you're in. Because if you think about when you're in a relaxed mood, let's say it's a Sunday afternoon, you're sitting outside in the sun, the kids are running around, you've just had a lovely lunch, you're more relaxed. Your thought process is a lot slower. Yeah. As soon as you get into a fearful state or you're anxious or something happens and triggers your nervous system, the thoughts come a lot faster and now they're jumping a lot quicker. Wow. So really it's about paying attention to what you're thinking about and what you're saying to yourself when you're feeling stressed. And the human body is a barometer, right? And it's a fantastic barometer. So really what you need to do, the first thing anybody needs to do is to check in with the body and say to yourself, how am I feeling right now? Like really, how am I feeling? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling depressed? And then if you check in with your body and say, okay, I'm not feeling so great. I wasn't feeling so great yesterday and I did exactly the same thing. And I said to myself, what am I focusing on right now? And what have I been telling myself for the last several minutes or the last half an hour? And what I do is I ask myself that question. I say, what have I been thinking about for the last X amount of time, right? And I try and retrace my thoughts. I try and retrace the conversation I've been having in my head. And I think, okay, what was I thinking about before that? And then what was I thinking about before that? And then you arrive, just like I did, I arrived at a realization of, oh my gosh, yeah, I told myself something that's not accurate. And because I told myself that it wasn't accurate, I then bought into that thought process, and one thought jumped to the next. And before I knew it, I was creating a picture in my mind that wasn't even happening. It wasn't real, but because it's a picture that I was creating in my mind, it felt real. And then immediately the body's emotional reaction to that picture is directly linked. And now you have the feeling of whatever you're feeling. So it's about being conscious. And that's where it comes clarity conversation with yourself. How am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling like that? What have I been thinking about? Is that accurate that I've just told myself? I just heard myself say something to myself in my mind. Is that accurate? Is that real? Or have I just made that up? How do I know that's real? Do I have all the information? Most of the time.
What's also interesting about that, Alan, is, and I entirely agree what you say, is, but when the mind gets busy and confused, if you're stuck, okay, it starts to fizz away, and it starts scenarioing what ifs. We go there, what if this, and what about that? Why this? You get all these questions buzzing in your head, and you can end up sabotaging yourself. Absolutely. And one of the things I recognize there are people better than me, worse than me, bigger than me, smaller than me. They're all different types of characters. I'm just somewhere in the middle of all this spectrum, and whatever works for you is right. Whatever you're feeling, whether you're feeling amazing or you're feeling shit, that's great, because it is your reality. And that's fine. So don't necessarily listen to all the opinion makers out there and the thinking shapers. I mean, yes, tap into it if you need it, but you know what? Be confident in your own scenario. It is what it is, and you are where you are, and we are where we are. And it's accepting that, and not trying to think that I'm comparing myself to somebody else. And why is that person more successful than me? Why are they working harder than me? Why do they appear to be happier than I am? Why are they achieving more than I am? It's irrelevant.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of that kind of conversation people are doing amongst themselves, because they are sitting idle. They are watching on social media a lot more. They're watching what's going on.
Yeah.
And I guess they're not watching. It's almost like what the internet calls as trolls. Basically, they're all they just sit there consuming this, and
it's feeding mental sabotage. That's what's so frustrating about this. It's trying to wean people off. I mean, we talk. A lot of people are sort of age. I'm 54, born in '66. Great year. England won the World Cup. But we talk about kids, and their consumer, their obsession with mobile phones and digital platforms, and you just think, oh my God, that wasn't like that in the old days, But that's their reality, and that's fine. Let them enjoy that. Let them do that. That's absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I get that. I absolutely get that point. I mean, today they were talking a lot more in the media, a lot more about mental illness in 18 to 24-year-olds, because they're detached from the physical connectivity of what they had, and they showed the portrayal of a young artist who's he goes, only a few weeks ago who's on the stage performing to thousands, and today he's locked up or confined in his bedroom, as he calls it, basically. And to that extent, what I want to get to first in this is, I think there's this intrinsic relationship between what people are consuming from a social perspective and the way that they're having the conversation with themselves unconsciously, not consciously, and then the impact it's having with when they're kind of sleeping and stuff. So like, my sleep patterns are interesting. I'm sleeping earlier, I'm sleeping for longer, but I'm getting really good, fresh kind of, I feel quite fresh when I get up in the morning, compared to most days where I'm quite sluggish and then I get into the zone, basically. And that's because I'm busy, I'm active, I'm happy doing the things that I'm doing. I feel energized by the end of the day. Whereas most people normally are trying to start their day with high energy. I'm trying to finish my day with high energy. So, Alan, what's the kind of thing that's kind of set up in this, where, people are having conversations with themselves and they're having clarity conversations, but they're not having the right type of clarity conversations? How do you explain that, or how do we kind of help people realize that they're not having the right clarity conversations?
Well, Piers mentioned, getting caught up in all the stuff that's online and the opinions of other people. That's very draining for people. They don't realize how draining that is because, like you say, it's going on unconsciously for long periods of time. If you read something on Facebook or you get caught up in a conversation, I've seen a lot of people get caught up in arguments on Facebook about different opinions about what's happening with COVID-19 and all the stuff that's being passed around and all the stuff all the links that are being put online. And, a long time after that, that's still going on in the unconscious mind, even though people don't realize it, then they don't sleep well, right? So it's really just not getting sucked into that. Like Piers correctly said, I think that's a very important thing because people don't realize how draining that is. Whatever you are focusing on with the conscious mind, and especially if you're labeling it, that's a very, very, it's such an important thing that people don't really understand the severe impact of labeling something. When you label something, if everyone has a seesaw of good and bad, right and wrong, and we have been taught that since we were born, and that includes punishment and reward. So from the youngest time, we've been taught about punishment and reward. If we do things well, we get rewarded. We do things badly, we get punished. And we've got this good box and this bad box. And what we do is if we don't like something, if it doesn't make us feel good, we put it in the bad box and then we label it. But what we don't realize is that when we put something on the bad side of the seesaw in the bad box and we label it, we still are labeling that for a while afterwards because we feel self-righteous. And that gives us a certain feeling of, there's a false sense of control in our lives, especially now, if you look around where most people feel like they're completely out of control.
Yeah.
So they're looking for a false sense of control. So what they are doing is they are jumping onto conversations where they can vocalize their own frustrations and they can get into arguments because it gives them a false sense of certainty or false sense of control because now they feel justified. But then the challenge of that is that you take that with you for the next few hours in your unconscious and you are still churning that over and it's very draining and then people don't sleep well as a result or they can't get to sleep.
And this is a symptom of cyber addiction in a way because so many people rely on digital platforms to consume information. The news, we listen to social media and so on. And that's our primary source of information. And what we end up is, because there's such a volume of this stuff and an abundance of this, what we actually have, and so I remember a talk years ago about having, too much abundance and not enough attention. We get overwhelmed by this stuff. And what we end up doing is, we get sucked in. And the number of conversations, exactly what you said, Alan, I've watched people going, yes, no, you just watch this from an objective level, and you just think, seriously?
Yeah.
And a tip I would say to somebody is, if you feel yourself getting sucked into this, because it is a vortex, you'll get sucked in and very, very easily. It's very subtle.
Very quick.
Feel yourself getting into that and you think, shit, how do I get out of this? Just immediately say, how important is this to me? How important is this to me? Because if it's not intrinsic to your performance and your goals in your life, then immediately try and find something else to latch onto. And one of the things that I do quite a lot, particularly when you're in a sense of loss of connection, or you're feeling stuck in something, is have something to look forward to. Once a week, once every 2 weeks, every day, something like that. For example, for me, my family with my sister, cousins, children, have a weekly movie night. Actually, tonight we're doing a quiz night between the family, and it's every Wednesday night. We sit down, we have dinner, a couple of drinks, and it's fun. And that's our time. And I look forward to that every week. And no matter what shit's going out in the world, Wednesday nights during lockdown, that's my time.
Yeah.
And I definitely say to everyone, just find something you can look forward to each week.
I like that.
My son was actually creating some questions the other day and asking for help from myself and his mother because they were doing a quiz night with him and his friends online. And there's so many different ways that we can be creative, and that's a good thing to remember. And we have this amazing faculty, the imagination. And if we're not using the imagination consciously and constructively, it's going to use us in terms of anxiety and frustrations. Yeah. So people need to remember that. And you have control over what you think and what you say to yourself and what you choose to believe about situations. And just think about if you were talking to a child, if you were talking to a 5-year-old and you're having a conversation with a 5-year-old and you were trying to help them to understand that what's just happened to them or what they're going through, maybe they've fallen off their bicycle or something, or they got something happen to them on the sports field and now they are feeling, very, very dismayed about it. Perhaps they're in tears. What would you say to that child, right? You would help them to see the other side of it. You would help them to see that there's a win.
I've got to tell you, there's a great book called The Bright Stuff by a lady called Dr. Jane Simoter. and it's basically about creative engagement for children. And it talks a lot about, you know, the mindset of children who are very, very mindful, because they all want it right now. You know, why can't I have my toy? I want my food. I want this. You know, they live in the moment. They don't look at the future, and they don't worry about the past. It's all about the moment.
Yeah.
And just, you know, some of the questions, and I love just giving a thought about something which I spoke to somebody about 2 weeks ago with a young kid. When was the last time you had a conversation with a 5-year-old? You know, just if you've got relatives, just try and have a conversation and explain your business to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, and it's amazing because they are so creative, they're so leveling, and they're so basic in their thinking.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant because it's absolutely real.
It would definitely bring you back to humility and humbleness for sure. I tell you.
And they in the moment, like you say, they're so in the moment. They often dispel pearls of wisdom about if you ask them questions.
I mean, I read this book. There's a chapter in this book which has got about 30 or 40 questions to ask, which are creative thinking questions. Things like, you know, what would you find at the bottom of the garden if there was a door and you opened it? Oh my God, you say that to a 5-year-old child, and you can get into an incredible, wonderful conversation, which is a great departure from the stress that we have today.
Yeah.
So, and it comes down to just being mindful and present and living in that moment.
Yeah.
I think just on that point, I mean, Andrew Pfeiffer's commented and says, what you choose to focus on can either drain your energy or increase your energy, which is very powerful. And, you know, Piers, just a little bit like what you have this kind of routine or regular sort of quiz and dinner night with, you know, once a week with your family. We tend to have, like on a Saturday, we have a throwdown. We get all our guys together on Zoom. You know, everyone's made their own little bit of food. Everyone's got their favorite drink out. We're actually trying to play different games. And the whole idea of it is each weekend we want different games. We don't want to play the same one. So it's not about being innovative. It's pushing you out into thinking about different. So all of a sudden we had this weekend just gone. We had play your cards right, for example. You know, where you've got to go higher or lower, and then we had this other one where we selected a number of songs and we gave them 5 or 10 minutes away from the camera to go and decide how they're going to do the dance routine for that song, etc.
Absolutely great, isn't it?
But do you know one thing it did? Is for a couple of hours, it allowed people to get lost out of their daily routine.
Yeah.
You know, it was a form of escapism from 7:30 in the evening till midnight, where people were going to sleep, not thinking about the week, what's happened around them, or what the letter that they received this morning from, you know, it was just a form of escapism. To Allan, that word escapism, how important is it that people get a bit of escapism in their daily rituals and stuff? So I mean, you meditate, right?
Highly important. I think it's highly important. You know, I saw somebody was saying the other day, if you can't go outside, go inside. And they placed this beautiful picture of someone sitting in the position of, you know, cross-legged as if they were meditating. And I just love that. And I saved it, and I've shared that with a few friends who have been complaining about the fact they can't go outside. It's such an important thing to do because, you know, you mentioned about all the thoughts we have going through our minds all the time. And, you know, and the function of meditation is to get underneath the noise in your own head, into the silence. And the silence is profound because in the silence, you find the answers that you're not expecting. Answers pop up there with, you know, just unexpectedly. And really that's, you know, Piers, you mentioned, you know, the word spiritual and spiritually connected to people we love, etc. And, you know, I've been teaching spiritual psychology for a while. And it's such an important thing to remember that, you know, there's a part of us that is boundless, it's untouchable. It's, you know, when we get stuck in the limited mental constructs of the psyche, the human psyche, that's very limiting, and they're mental constructs. We forget that. And then what that does is it makes us forget that there's a part of us that is actually boundless and timeless. And if we can get underneath the noise of our mind and into the silence. So I do that every single morning, you know, and I've been doing it live on my group with my people, and it's been awesome. People have been, the feedback that I've been getting with people who have never done it before, they say that it's really, they're looking forward to the best part of their day because it just gets them out of their head. It gets them into they feel so relaxed. And then that's so important to just allow yourself to relax and stop thinking. You know, it's very difficult to stop thinking. So that's why being mindful.
You know, so going back to the routine thing we talk about, you know, I mean, so, you know, I have little triggers in my set that I've developed over, and in some cases years, you know, things that I can do that take me to a place where if it's all just getting a bit too much, you know, I mean, one of them is 10 breaths. You know, if you do 7-11 breathing for 10 times, you know, 7 breaths in, 11 breaths out, do that 10 times, you will feel different. You know, there's a physiological thing that if you take your left hand and you grip the left hand and slow the circulation down so you hold it onto the side, because you know if you're going to have a heart attack, it's normally a pain in your left arm. That's where the biggest blood flow in the body is. If you hold that and slow that blood down, you'll feel much calmer.
Yeah.
Little things I've got little things that I do which just work for me. You know, develop little things that are routine and just keep repetition. Do more and more and more.
Exactly the same as you, Piers, in the morning, breath work, and slowing the heart. I focus on my heart now and imagine my heart's beating in slow motion, and it slows the blood flow down, and it's so calming. And breathing, it's using your imagination, using the imaginative faculty of your brain, which is so powerful. You know, if you use that in a very constructive way, it has an amazing effect on
Ketan, you're talking about escapism, and I love that thought, because, you know, I go skiing, for example. It's the one time when I absolutely don't think about anything else, because I can't come skiing. But, you know, one thing, that's why you have holidays. You know, holidays are there to unwind and relax.
Yeah.
Of course, we can't do that now. So I had a friend, he and his family went on holiday in the house. They all put their swimming trunks on, lay a beach towel on their beds, put sunglasses on, got the suntan lotion out and a cocktail, and sunbathed on their beds.
Amazing.
Just do some creative stuff. Just have fun.
I've seen.
Can I just share a story about that, Ket?
Yeah, sure, please.
You know, you're talking about escapism. I'll never forget one of the most powerful speakers I've ever heard, and just a beautiful man by the name of Jerry Coffey. And Jerry Coffey was shot down in Japan, and he was a prisoner of war for 7 years. And he was in a little bamboo, cage. And when they were shot down, they were not able to speak to each other. So what they did was they formed their own alphabet by tapping. And so he could pass messages to each other just by tapping the bamboo. And but what was so powerful is he said that for 7 years he escaped from that cage in his mind, and he played golf on all of his favorite golf courses in his mind. He played a full 18 holes, sometimes 36 holes every day in his mind.
Wow.
And he was so effective in doing that in his mind, and that took him out of the prison, right? And he was just free on the golf course in his mind, in full color, full sound. And he was so effective in doing that eventually, when he was released 7 years later, and he played golf, his game had dropped by 9 shots, right? By 9 shots. And anyone who knows golf will know that's an exceptional, that's fantastic. And his golf game was so much better because he was so effective in playing the game. And for that period of time, while he was locked up in that cage in those severe circumstances, and he was free, And again, it reminds me of Viktor Frankl, man, who survived 4 concentration camps and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He said exactly the same thing. He said, no matter what restrictions are placed on us, nothing can limit the freedom of the mind, the freedom to think what you want to think and to go wherever you want to go in your mind.
I mean, it's incredible to I mean, it's also quite liberating. I mean, I don't play that much golf, unfortunately, so I don't think if I can see myself playing 18. You
can do it with anything.
But this is the point. I think the feel good that you have, for me, for example, when we have these kind of social gatherings, so I'm quite a social. I love being around people and engaging and entertaining and eating and drinking, all these kind of things. And just for those couple of hours, you're deep in that. There's no thought of work. There's no thought of, I've got to get this email out or nothing. But it's actually the moments after everything finishes, which are probably my serene moments. It's a bit like watching the sunrise or the sunset, for example. For me, I can go back and reflect and think, wow, where did those 4 hours go?
Yeah.
How, if you can escape for 4 hours and not put any kind of pressure on yourself, how good do you feel about yourself? So no matter if I've finished a case of beer or just had one, you kind of feel punch drunk, but at the same time you feel completely alert and fresh with where you go. So I think it's important to say that when you're having a clarity conversation or a clear conversation with yourself, you've got to have that sense of freedom and escapism within your mind. Otherwise, you're only going to focus on the stuff that you're not supposed to be focusing on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my God. So let me just get some last few messages. We're running fast up out of time. Andrew, again, reinforce positives more than negatives with children. Well, I think, children are very good at calling you out on things. They have no inhibitions in the fact that they don't understand the parameters of particular things. So I think, I've had conversations with my two in the past where they've called me out on so many things where, it makes it so hard for you to answer because you're trying to find a politically correct answer that you just end up actually giving into what they're saying there. He says the true virtual reality is within your mind. So I think some of you that may struggle to break that mold and create that, if you do have the ability to create virtual reality on your digital products, etc., try starting with something like that. I think, what is it, Minecraft? That's probably one of the first games that came out, which was very kind of open in that kind of source. So look, we're running fast out of time here, and I really, really respect and appreciate the time, the expertise, the insights that you brought, Allan, and Piers. Obviously, it's not that I love everything that Piers brings into this context. Now, if we were to leave some, I wouldn't say lasting thoughts, but the thoughts that will allow people to project themselves into this area of starting to have clearer conversations with themselves. Allan, what advice would you give them today?
Well, I think it's important to feel good. It's very difficult to have a clear conversation with yourself if you're feeling stressed, or if you feel like you're under pressure, or if you're giving yourself a hard time, or if you're blaming anything around you. If you're looking for something to blame. And feeling good is important. And I say to people, the most important thing that you can do is feel good. And you've got to do whatever you need to do to feel good. So even if it's just lying, just like Piers said, imagine you're lying on a beach. The sun is beautiful. It's really sunny right now where I am in London. I'm sure it's probably sunny right around the country right now. I haven't paid attention.
Not sunny here at all. This is just a flashlight.
And what I do is I use my imagination now. I pretend I'm surfing, and I remember being on a surfboard in the surf and just how good that makes me feel, or on a snowboard. It's looking for ways to feel good, because when you feel good, then you're more inclined to feel inspired, and then you're more inclined to have different ideas. What I have been telling some of my clients to do is, when they're feeling a lack of confidence or a lack of certainty, I've encouraged them to go all the way back to the furthest they could remember and write down all the wins in their life, all the successes they've had, who they were being during those successes, how they were feeling, what they can remember about those experiences, the positive emotions, and then also to going back and remember all the painful experiences they've had, all the losses, all the lows, and then to ask themselves, what did they believe about themselves during those experiences, and what beliefs did they create about themselves? And then what that does is it gives them a graph of their life, right? The ups and downs of their life. If they look back at that, what that does give people, anyone who's done this will say the same thing. And a lot of people have given me the feedback already, said, wow, it's left me with a real, like a renewed confidence that I've been through so many things already. I'm sure I could get through this, right? And because then they realize that they've just been limiting themselves on their own ability, and then focusing on the negatives and focusing on the fear. Because if you go back and you remember all the things you've been through, I had exactly the same conversation last night with one of my friends. Yes. And I was talking about some of the challenges I've had, in terms of extreme challenges, and how, I should have lost my life several times, but I made it, right? And what that gave me was, it gave me a crazy internal certainty. You know what? I've been through that. I've got through that. I'll get through this. It's all cool, right? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You got to remind yourself about that a lot. Just say to yourself all the time, this too shall pass. It's going to be okay. If you have a choice to feel how you feel, then choose to feel good, because feeling good is so important.
Wow. And I know, Piers, you like your advice in threes. So do you have three little nuggets of advice that you'd give at this stage?
Funny enough, I do.
What a tee up.
Love that. My daughter, over the years, has identified things which I really love, called infinity moments. And an infinity moment is a moment when everything is just perfect. You don't know why. And I've had many of those. For example, in Chicago last year in the summer, cycling down Lakeshore Drive, the sun is out, people on the beach, big city. It was an infinity moment. The world was a really good place. So my view, my thing is to, first of all, create your infinity moment. And you can do that using the next two things, which is to create, in the past, find the old moment when you last had an infinity moment. It goes back to what you were saying, Allan, about imagine that time when you just felt amazing.
Mm.
So if it's a sporting thing, when you, I don't know, you scored a goal or you got a hole in one or whatever it might be, or you won an order, whatever that is, find that infinity moment and just remember that. The next thing is to find your future infinity moment. Find that good moment in the future you want to be, and bring the two of those together to create an infinity moment now.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I love that. And you know, that's what that's one of the things I've been including in my morning meditation, is I've been getting people to project into the future and create a moment, 3 moments actually, 3 moments that they can feel excited about right now. They can just make them up, right? 3 amazing moments that they can feel excited about right now, and then be grateful for those moments right now, because the energy of that is really uplifting. And it's you know, people must remember they can do that at any time of the day, whenever especially when they're feeling stressed. Just take time out, take a few deep breaths, like Piers said. Breathing is very important. Center yourself, relax yourself, get under the noise of your mind, and remember something amazing or forecast something amazing.
Truly amazing stuff. And 2 amazing guys that have come in and given so much knowledge bombs. Guys, you have no excuses, you know. Go out there, feel good about what you're doing, live your life moment to moment, project and think about a future infinity moment, bring it into an infinite moment that you've had from the past, the trilogy of infinity moments that will allow you to feel good, escape through your mind. If everything else is holding you back, one thing that won't is your mind. Now,
I feel a speech coming on, or a presentation about the trilogy of infinity.
A trilogy of infinity. That's what I should have called it. There's definitely a vlog in there somewhere. I'm telling you.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to have to jump off. I've got a conference call starting at 4. So, but listen, fantastic, guys. So, listen, stay well, stay sane, stay safe.
Thank you.
Great to chat with you, my friend. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thank you. So we're just about to actually wrap up on this. So, Allan, if anyone is out there that wants to reach out, you have your meditation on a live at 11 o'clock on your Facebook page. Is that correct?
It's there. I've got a group. They can find, if they go onto my personal Facebook page, they'll find the group is linked there. I've been posting about it there, or they can just search my name and then search the Awakened Soul.
The Awakened Soul, yeah.
And I'm happy to send you the link if you want. But yeah, it's fantastic. If people want to come and join us at 11 a.m. every morning, it's just us, a group of us getting together and just really just being calm, centered, and just I lead them through this guided visualization.
Beautiful.
It's about an hour long.
Wonderful. And I think if there are people out there that want to engage with you more, perhaps come on board, maybe get some of your advice, guidance, and tutelage, how can they find you? I mean, do you have a website or anything like that they can go and check out, or anything like that?
Yeah, allanspeaks.com.
And that's with 2 L's, right?
2 L's A-N. Well, thanks for asking.
Just make sure, because everyone will be like, oh, I was checking out Allan, but no.
2 L's A-N. So allanspeaks.com. Or they can just reach out to me on Facebook. If people send me a message, I've just noticed this morning, actually, I just found a whole bunch of private messages on Facebook that didn't reach me, were filtered, by Facebook spam filter.
Yeah.
So they're not those people, specific people aren't my friends. So, but it's a mental note for me to keep checking that spam filter. But they can reach out to me privately on Facebook or on Instagram, or they can send me an email through the website, allanspeaks.com.
Wonderful. So guys, that's it. That's a wrap for this session. It's been great. I mean, loads of people come and watch this. I'm really pleased to have you on. Allan, you have a great following. You have so much to give, and I can't wait to have you back on again soon. I think next you're up with Raghav today. So the next time that we're going to have you on. So there's a double or a dynamic duo of mindset mastery going to be happening.
I'm looking forward to being with Raghav and you, because he's an awesome guy, Rag. I love him.
Yeah, he's amazing. It's been amazing. And having you both on this week has given some really good perspectives from different angles. And I think bringing you both together is going to be really electric. So if you're watching this right now on record, or you're watching this on the live right now, watch out for that. That's coming up in the early part of May. You can go through to our website, enterpriselab.co.uk/COVID-19, and you'll be able to click onto the sessions and book yourself on to be given a reminder for that one. Don't miss that one out. But that's a wrap for today. I really appreciate everyone that's come on. Tomorrow we're finishing up the week all about fitness and nutrition hacks. So after all the stuff we've been talking about, the mind and the body, Now it's all about how you nourish it. So, Allan, thank you again for coming on. And for everyone else, don't forget, stay at home, stop the spread, and keep saving lives. Until tomorrow, I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks
Again. Thank you. Thanks.